Hi everyone, I'm Matthew Bourne, I'm the Director of New Adventures, and I'm here to host this panel of discussion about the show Edward Scissorhands, which we're featuring this week as our featured show on our social media platforms. It's a show we all love very much, and we've got a lovely bunch of people together to talk about it who've spread through several years of the show's been on right from the very beginning through to our last revival, which was 5 years ago, 3 years, 4 years ago. Something like that. And we have a brilliant panel here today to share some memories with you. Maybe we should introduce ourselves first. You know who I am, so let's go around the panel.
Hi, I'm Etta Murfitt. I'm the Associate Artistic Director of Matthew Bourne's New Adventures, and I played Peg Boggs and Old Kim, and I performed in each production, each time it was done, so it was done 3 times.
Hi there, I'm Maddie Brennan, and I was in the original production, and I created the role of Tiffany Covett and Old Kim. And then in the productions after that, I played Peg Boggs and Joyce Monroe as well. So done all 3 productions and 3 roles.
Hi, I'm Kerry Biggin. I'm resident artist for New Adventures. I was the original Kim in the first production in 2005, and I also played Candy Covett, Maddie's daughter.
Yeah.
2 months here. And I went on to perform in the revival in 2008 and 9, and then I had the privilege of working with Ash and some of the new cast for the revival in 2014.
Hi, my name's Ashley Shaw, and yeah, I was in the 3rd revival of Edward Scissorhands, and I played Kim Boggs and even a couple of times Bunny Monroe.
I'm Dominic North, and I was in the first revival in 2008, and then the second revival in 2014, and I played the role of Edward. And I was like 4th cast or cover. Can't remember his name at one point. It changed. I was like,
Family.
I was Kevin, and then I was Sheldon, and then it never even happened.
Sheldon.
So, yeah, just Edward in the end.
Hi, I'm Liam Mower, and like Ashley, I was in the 2014 revival, and I played Edward Scissorhands and Gerald Monroe.
Fabulous. So Maddie wins for the most roles, I think.
Yeah, Maddie takes the gong.
Yeah. Can't do without you, Maddie, obviously. I thought I'd start off by telling everyone a little bit of the background as to how this piece came about, because it has quite a history. And I didn't realise how far back that was. I looked through some of my notes from the piece earlier today, and I thought, when did I first meet Caroline Thompson? Because Caroline Thompson is the brilliant screenwriter who wrote Edward Scissorhands. So she's a dear friend, has been friends ever since I first met her with an eye to doing this project. And I thought it was during the filming of a film she made called Buddy with my friend Alan Cumming, and I went to the set, or I think it was to the set, or they were filming something. And I went along and met Caroline and mentioned the fact that Edward was a project that I'd really love to explore. And I looked up the date of the film, and it was 1997. So that was like when we were probably in the US doing the first time we toured with Swan Lake. So it's a long time ago, you know, so obviously the idea had come before that. So it's an idea that was there probably even a couple of years before that. So Caroline became I always call her the fairy godmother of this project, because she really wanted it to happen. She loved the idea of it becoming a dance piece. And she was very supportive of it. And I knew that I had to get to Tim Burton, obviously, who created the film, and the character of Edward, and Danny Elfman, who wrote the amazing music. And that was what first drew me to the piece, was the music. I thought it was very danceable. I felt it had lots of dance quality to it. I felt it, just to expand it would be really interesting, and create a score around this quite balletic music at times. And even looking at, if you look at the CD cover and look at the names of the tracks from the film, it's things like the Suburban Ballet, and it sort of refers to ballet and dance quite often. So it sort of put the idea in my head. To cut a long story short, it took quite a long time to get to meet Danny Elfman. I happened to be in the States a while later. Caroline and Danny were very good friends. She maybe have mentioned it to him, and I had a new agent at the time, and she said to me, "Who do you want to meet in Hollywood?" Like anyone. And I said, I need to meet Danny Elfman. And literally he was there the next day for lunch. The next day. Anyway, so Danny and I had a great relationship working on the show, thinking about how it could be adapted for a few years. I also had to get to meet Tim Burton. He was very generous about it. He said, "You must do your version of it. You must do what you want to do with it," which I thought was brilliant. He said, "I'll be there if you want me to, or not if you don't want me to." And once those three were all sort of in place, it seemed like we could move ahead quite quickly. What I quickly realised is a very precious project to all of them. It's very close to their hearts. It was something that they really came from them as people. They were a little bit more protective of it than you would think, in a way, understandably so. You know, it was, but still very generous for their time. I developed it along with Caroline, who's a writer, of course, and it was very easy to work with her. Danny was very busy, not forthcoming with music particularly, and we realised he's a very busy guy, and really found it very difficult to give this proper time that we needed to develop it. So I brought in my colleague Terry Davis, who's one of our associate artists, to work alongside Danny. That sort of worked out for a while, but then Danny kind of pulled out of it, gave us the rights to all the music from the film, and Terry the right to play with it and stuff. So that's how it happened in the end. Danny was just too busy. Tim kind of left us alone. I brought together my usual team of Les Brotherston, who had an incredible task actually to rethink what Edward Scissorhands should look like, or could look like, as a ballet, as a dance piece, without aping Tim Burton's amazing style too much as well. So he came up with his own way of doing things. And we got Howard Harrison in for our lighting, who did a great job. But this was, it actually took around 8 years to get us to the point where we went into rehearsal. That's a long story, but it is quite interesting how long it takes sometimes to get to the point with all the rights holders and people who have the project very close to their hearts, to get to the point where you can do it. And we did eventually get it into a studio with the help of Mark Platt, who's a Hollywood film producer, the father of Ben Platt, who's now famous singer and actor, who's a friend of the company, and he really helped us negotiate all those issues. Our first cast, we had 2 Edwards, Richard Windsor and Sam Archer, and Kerry, who's here with us as Kim, Hannah Vassallo was the other one, I believe, at that time. Is that right? And Etta and Maddie were Peg. We had the great Scott Ambler as Bill. I think Andrew Corbett was the other one. From what I remember. And we had Michaela as Joyce. Yeah. And I think Mika was also Joyce, Mika Smiley. And Jim was James Leese and Adam Galbraith. That was our original sort of cast, I think. And I remember going into rehearsals, I'd forgotten that we'd done quite a lot of workshops, but I didn't think we went into rehearsals with a lot of material. What do you guys remember, who were in the original cast, of how we went into that rehearsal period, and what that rehearsal period was like? I remember it being too short. It was about 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's right. And it was Shoreditch Town Hall rehearsed in before, so that was quite odd, which is sort of like a cavernous rehearsal room. And I think one of the first things we did was we decided to work with the families. So each family had to come up with their own little vignette that described them, and some of them were amazing, but it was quite good because it sort of defined at that point what each family was going to be, and I think that was one of the first things that we did. Were there 5 or 6 families, is that right? What is there's the Bobs, the Grubbs, the Covets,
Monroes,
the Monroes and the other creatures.
5, yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone remember the Rainbow family?
Yes.
We had another one at one point. They were sort of like hippie family.
Oh, really?
I remember, I think the only thing that I'd done before we went into rehearsals was that Hannah and I and Sam and Richard had done some work with you. I think we only did maybe 3 days, just looking at some of the duets. So I think we did a day on the farewell duet, and then Hannah and I and Etta, we did a day on the ice dance, and maybe we did the Kim and Jim dance. We did workshop that a little bit as well before we went to rehearsals. But I think that was those were the only things that we touched on beforehand.
Yeah, I seem to remember that we didn't have very little ensemble material to play with.
Yeah, no.
Maddie, do you have any memories of that rehearsal period?
Yeah, well, the first memory I have was on my way into rehearsal. The first two people I saw were Scott and Etta, and I remember thinking, oh, there they are, the Bogs. They walked behind me, and I remember catching up with you from Old Street Station. But I definitely remember that the vignettes that we did, the family vignettes of and I remember the Ever Creatures did one like a dinner table, and they did this amazing sort of like, it was almost like a religious ceremony that they did, and I really remember that vividly. And then I remember we did loads of cleaning and stuff like that. But another memory that I've really got, which stood out to me, was because I was a parent at the time. I remember the parents and the children sort of did quite separate rehearsals, and I wasn't involved in topiary at all. But I remember when topiary, the first time we saw topiary sort of in the room with the music and everything, it was without obviously the topiary costumes, but I remember thinking how amazing it looks, and visualizing how it would look, all those sort of like topiary figures brought to life. And I really remember that music in that big room, because it was such a high room, wasn't it? And just the sound of that music and everyone sort of coming to life. I remember that was a real moment for me. I remember thinking, God, that's amazing. But then was actually quite glad that I wasn't doing it.
Especially in the costume. We should explain to everyone that if you haven't seen it, there's a section where one of Edward's skills is cutting topiary, and in our piece, the topiary comes to life. So we have dancing figures of the topiary. Not the company's favourite thing to do, because their faces are covered up. They're quite difficult to dance in. It is like you're a dancing hedge, basically. And but it looks so brilliant.
Oh, it's amazing.
I think people actually knew that it was a good idea and knew that it looked great, even though they didn't love doing it in those costumes particularly. But it does look great.
Yeah. Topiary heads got better, and the vision got better the more we did it. And then we ended up having to put that red strip across the front of the stage. People could see where the edge of the stage was, because you can see down, but you can't really see out too much.
That's right.
One more thing just going on what Maddie said, I remember that Edward's, the beginning of our rehearsal process, like Etta said, we were really focusing on the families and the suburban ballet and cars and family portraits and all that, sort of building the community of Hope Springs, and none of that involved Edward. And I remember Sam and Richard being in another room, working on things, and we hadn't, hadn't seen them at all. And I remember them saying to me that they felt really isolated because of that process, and it was so parallel to the story in a way. It was amazing, kind of, because it really helped kind of cement that relationship straight away.
I think it made them not quite nervous that we got about 2 weeks in and they hadn't really done anything with anyone else, and there's only 3 weeks left before the premiere. I'm getting very nervous, and they didn't feel involved, and I think maybe Dominic can tell us a bit more about that as well. I think it is a little bit isolated as a part, I'll just say a little bit about, for everyone, just so they know what happened. We got to the point where we premiered the piece. It was in Plymouth in 14th of November 2005 was the sort of world premiere that we did. And we did a season in London. Tim Burton came to our opening night, which is brilliant, supported us. This is something I didn't remember, which some of you may not know. It's their second longest season ever at Sadler's Wells. It was 11 weeks.
That's right. I remember it vividly.
Wow.
Every single day of it, yeah. The only other big one was Nutcracker, the first time we did it, where we were supposed to do 11 weeks and we added an extra week on. Because we only really do 6, 7 or 8 now. But so it's quite a difference, really. Done it internationally. We did it around the US, quite a big tour around the USA, Japan, Korea. The first revival, which was very soon after, 3 years after the premiere, was I think we opened at the Sydney Opera House. Am I wrong? Or did we? I think we did international touring, then went to another Sabbath thing. But we had an amazing experience of working at the Sydney Opera House, which is the only time we've ever done it. But we played there for 3 weeks. It's a real privilege, a great memory for us all. We played in Paris, Antwerp. We did our second Sabbath season. And then we revived the piece, as some of you lot have said, in 2014. And, you know, kept working on the show, really, and developing it. So I think it was one of those shows that's got better and better the more we've done it, I think, in terms of what we know about it. The more you know about a show, the more you know what it needs, in a way, you know. So that's why it was great to have Etta and Maddie still there and Kerry feeding into it as well, because bringing that knowledge of what people know of the show from before, but also then be open-minded to develop it, knowing what it is a really brilliant thing. So I was just going to move on to talking about the roles a little bit. And I wanted to talk about the role of Edward, obviously, with Dom and Liam. What makes it such a special role? What are the obvious challenges of the role? What is that? How did you approach that?
Obviously, like, it's
your first principal role, Dommy, wasn't it?
It was, actually. And do you remember, I was thinking today, I remember the train journey from Milton Keynes to London when you told me. And we spoke about this before we started. There'd been like an Edward audition and then like a cover Edward audition. And I was there as to audition for the cover. And I was still in Nutcracker, being, you know, Licorice Man. And I was a bit like, the things clash. And I was like, I didn't know how it'd work. And then you kind of said, oh, I want you to learn Edward. And I was like, all right, but what's my, I thought as the cover, and what's my other part or whatever? You're like, no, you're just going to have a go at it, you know, see how Australia goes. And I was like, wow, okay. I'm going, he's mad. I can't believe, because I previously I'd been in The Card Man and Swan Lake, and I'd covered the Prince, but it was kind of like emergency cover. I was just thrown on not knowing it. And then, yeah, this opening night was Sydney Opera House. It was my debut. And I think for me, it's an iconic character. You know, Johnny Depp, obviously an iconic actor. And like when you talked about all the creatives involved in it, it's like a modern fairy tale. Everybody knows it, and, you know, has a favourite scene in the film, or kind of has an idea of it, and you don't want to let anybody down. So there's that side of it. But then, as you say, the challenges of it, other than being on stage all the time, is the costume, the makeup, the hands, the wig. I think the scars. There's like layers of challenges within it. The not being able to go to the toilet, the overheating, the amount of sweat, the helplessness of if you've got hair in your mouth or you need a drink and you just can't do anything, or you've got an itch, or I mean, there's so many. I mean, anybody that's gone through it, you've got like a level of respect for them. You literally look at them in a different way. For me, getting used to the suit was quite a big one, because it's lovely in the beginning. It helps you all like rigid, and it's great because it helps your character. You walk funny naturally, and it holds your shoulders and that. And then as soon as you go, right, let's do a topiary dance, or like a duet without hands, because you spend most of your time training how to lift, not with your shoulder or your knee. And the weight of them, there's bits like there's bits where you just like, and just hold your arm out, and you're like, yeah, and then your arm, you can just see it failing in front of you, and like, and there's nothing you can do. You've got nothing left, and you're just there going, oh, help me.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Dommy said, obviously, I could just echo. And I think, again, going back to that idea of being so removed from everybody else, and like, obviously, I was so lucky to have Dommy actually in the rehearsal process. And it was so valuable to have him there because, again, for the first 2 weeks or so, me and Dommy were just together talking through, unless I was doing Gerald material, it was just generally me and Dommy just kind of talking through the role. And obviously he'd had the experience of playing the role and being on tour with the role and everything. So I was able to get as much information from Dommy as I could. But just so many elements to the show, so many challenges, and learning how to just move and deal with the hands in a completely different way. We didn't get our hands until really late again. I think we got them in the last week, and I think we both had like neck injuries because we hadn't worked with them for like 3.5 weeks, and then we went from nothing to doing like a whole run with the hands, and all of a sudden our bodies were like, what's going on, you know? But such an amazing experience, I think, going from rehearsal onto stage, and such transformation, and again, and also feeling, it's hard not to feel pressured because it's such an iconic story, and a story that so many people know. So like Dommy said, it was a little bit of a pressure to deliver and do justice for the role and to get it right. But I think everyone involved in the show really helped.
Like Kerry was saying, did you find that the sort of isolation of the part helps you play the part? Because you guys have to get ready really early in the role. It takes a long time to get the makeup on and the costume on and everything, and so you can't really eat with everyone else, and there's a lot of time. It takes you longer to get out of it, and everyone's gone home. You know, it's that kind of relation, even on touring, really, not just in rehearsal.
Yeah, I remember that, like feeling like the outsider, especially the first time I did it, because I was learning the one role. Everybody does everything all day, so you do class with everybody, and then you're in like a little studio. It was me and Matt Malthouse, and it was similar to me and Liam. You're just talking it through, trying to prepare yourself.
Hudson playing Edward at the time you came into it, Dom, is that right?
Yeah, so Matt Malthouse was the cover, and then he stepped up to, and he was amazing. He told me, like, because he was the original cast, he told me like Sam's version, Rich's version, you know, this, and we kind of do that all day, and then it'd be like the late calls, 6:30 to 8:30. You hadn't done anything with anyone, and then you'd just be in the main studio with the panel, solos or duets, and you'd just be like, ah. And like me and Liam, we'd talk it through. Same with me and Matt, we'd talk it through, but nothing can prepare you for it. You just got to like try and hammer it out as best you can. But yeah, you're just on your own as an outsider. And I found that when performing the piece, people would be like, oh, you coming out for dinner? I was like, no, I just, you know, Pret a Manger or Boots meal deal, got to get back in 20 minutes. Or like at the end of the show, sometimes I didn't know, because it was the first time I've been in a dressing room, principal dressing room. I was always like with the main boys. I'd come into class the next day after the show, and they'd be like, oh, where were you last night? We went for a beer and all this, and I didn't know anything. Nobody told me. I was just like sat on my own in my hotel room going, oh, you saddo.
Yeah, WhatsApp groups.
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
No WhatsApp groups then, no.
But we wouldn't see anyone, obviously, like Dommy said, we break for dinner, and then we wouldn't see anyone until 7:30 on the dot, you know, and we didn't really have that time before a performance. We didn't have much time, because obviously the makeup chair and then the wig, and then it took like 10-15 minutes to get into the costume. So we were ready by like 7:27, and then we'd walk to the stage and they were like, okay, Edward's here, let's start. And so you'd pretty much just grab a quick hello with people, and then the show would start. And then during the performance, obviously you have your duets and your stage time, but when you're off stage, you're in a corner sat on a chair in front of a fan, just de-sweating and trying to like catch your breath, you know. So even like there's not really any backstage banter or backstage like choreography or relationships. It's like we're just completely by ourselves, all on our own.
I'm sure it helps in a way, you know. It also concentrates you on you know what you're about to do, and Let's move on a little bit to the role of Kim, Kerry and Ash. I know from speaking with you, it's both a really favourite role for both of you. You love doing this role. What is it for both of you that makes the role so special? What is it that you love about it?
Kim's she's such a fun role to play because there's so much to her. She's that great age of kind of teenage. She's got those, you know, she's popular. She's got that relationship with her friends. She's got the kind of slightly trophy jock boyfriend, and then she's got this different dynamic with her family who are really loving, but they're, you know, mum's really protective and she's a bit like, oh, you know, mum, there's that teen angst that comes in, but then to the core of her is just complete kindness, and just the fact that she sees Edward, so, you know, she sees his heart, and she connects with, you know, with his sort of spirit, and she sees him as he is. You know, it's just lovely to have that variety of things to play with. And I think just seeing his innocence, and in a way she's the eyes of the audience. So that's quite an amazing responsibility to have, you know, and you kind of get the best of both worlds, because you get to do all the, you're in the community and you're doing all that stuff, and you're doing the great barbecue dances and the Christmas swing, and then, you know, you've also got these really intimate, beautiful moments and this like relationship that's developing. Yeah,
she's such a lovely character to play, and I think she's quite relatable, especially as a teenager, of that divide of wanting to be cool and wanting to fit in and doing what's right, and Kim is, you know, good and kind at the core, and she gets that from her family, from her mum Peg and everything. So it's really fun to play that kind of struggle, and like Kerry said, you get to have all the fun cool dances as well as the soft tender moments with Edward. And yeah, I don't know what it is about this show, it's like, it was just my favorite. I think growing up, like loving ballet and things, you know, you watch a lot of Nutcrackers, Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, so it was those kind of roles that I dreamed of doing. And leading up to doing Edward Scissorhands, I'd done Swan Lake, Cinderella, Nutcracker and Sleeping Beauty. And Scissorhands obviously just wasn't on my radar because I never dreamed it would be a stage show. So there's just something about it that it completely swept me off my feet. I just love it. It's such a good show. And Kim's just so lovely to play.
We'll try and bring it back for you, Ash.
I adore it. I love it.
Old Kim, the old Kim.
And everyone says it. Everyone who's done it, and there's that real, because we play families, you get that family bond as well with everyone.
Such a fun show as well. I mean, I think I've never laughed so much on a show as that show. We just had such good fun from the word go, actually, I think. Because I just remember, I've had a lovely memory actually of me and Et when it was a very long rehearsal day, and it was the end of the Kim Edward ice sculpture duet, and we were there, and we'd done something else. We'd be going over some other material. At the end of the thing, all we had to do was just come through the door and discover Kim and Edward. And I remember it was about 8 o'clock at night, and we'd worked ourselves into a frenzy of naughtiness, and just kept, every time we came through the door, we were just like, we had to just really brace ourselves because we just kept having hysterics. And I've just got such a memory of that moment. And then we were like, right, okay, let's just hold it together, come through the door, let's do it. And it was just, I've got such a lovely memory of that, because it just,
a funny sound or something. You had to be like you speaking.
Yes, it went, yes, exactly. It sort of went da, 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 as she came through the door, and that's all she did. She had to do like a little gesture.
You waited about 3 hours to do it.
I think there was a lot of girls behind those houses. There's always behind them
houses.
I was going to bring up the next subject about the perils of dancing with Edward. And I thought maybe if we start with Maddie and Etta, maybe. I'm thinking Maddie, particularly of the Joyce duet. Then we can all start pitching in a little bit, but everyone might have a story about that, about the problems of dancing with the Scissorhands.
It's funny actually, because I was really thinking when I read your question, I was thinking of having done those 3 different parts. I like, as Tiff, obviously I didn't really come into contact with Edward except maybe a little bit at the end of the parents' dance, but as Joyce, there's a moment at the end of the seduction where you're crawling on the floor towards Edward, and then you do this. I don't know how we did it. I was trying to remember how we did it choreographically, but there was like a roly-poly where you had to kind of reach forward, and he had the scissors, and I can't even remember when I worked with Michaela and learned it originally. I cannot fathom how we even managed to do it, because we crawled towards Edward and then somehow we rolled over him, but we, as a two, we rolled over each other as like a roly-poly with the scissors. And I have a really vivid memory of the sound of the plastic scissors like clacking on the stage as it went over me and over him. And then somehow we came out the other side. Is that right, boys? Did I remember that rightly?
Yeah. It's like a backwards roll with you in our lap.
Yes.
Yeah, if you get your head in the wrong angle or the hands,
yes.
it's a right mess.
Yes, and then all the bits then jumping up and doing the sort of koala hug with you to spin up to go round to the door, and it was just, but it somehow worked. And I have to say, I never felt unsafe ever. I felt, you know, you're always aware of the scissors, and strangely, because they look so amazing from a distance, and I'm sure they felt really heavy, but the actual blades to me seemed quite light. You know, I'm sure they were light, but the sound sorry, the sound of them was sort of like, it sounded that if they touched something, they didn't sound metal, they sounded quite plasticky, the sound of them. But so I never felt like, oh gosh, I'm going to get stabbed or anything. It just felt sort of quite, it strangely, I think because you guys did all that work and practicing with how to lift and stuff, you were so adept at it. And I think obviously because I came in after Michaela had done it originally, it just sort of happened. And there was I never remember thinking, oh, how am I going to make this work? It just worked.
I remember initially when we said that that anybody who danced with Edward should have goggles. It just didn't work. Because you can't see anything.
Steamed up, yeah.
The only thing I remember always slightly dreading was getting Edward into his
pajamas. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh God.
And sometimes it just worked perfectly, and then other times it would be a disaster. And sometimes I would look back as I turned the light off.
Yeah. Good luck.
Completely undone, or with his pajamas only halfway up his legs, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how are they going to do this?
And just scissors, like half the scissors in the armpit, just was stuck. I couldn't get, your arm through the sleeve, and just, but like so consistent. Like in week 2, we perfected it, and then in the 4th month of tour, we were still like, it's just some shows it just did not happen.
Yeah, and it would just be one thing, like a blade getting caught in a spoon, or the presentation of the pajama arm not being exactly right for the arms to go through. Oh, and of course, then all I'd be thinking about as I exited was what on earth they would be doing. So I'd be running around the wing having a actually, and amazingly, sometimes they'd be able to like get their arm through, or manage to even do up the pajamas, or pull up the pajamas with their hand.
I developed ways. There's some you can roll with, and you end up like getting a grip. There was like one place you could grip that you'd learn stuff, but I mean, there's so many fails. But I remember one of those where you go sing. It got really well, and I went sing, and just one of the blades just went. And we were all like, and it was like the Strongbow Cider advert where it was like doom doom. I was like, that's the new one, and we're all like, oh. And there's so many like snapped handles, or you just gotta
droopy finger.
Yeah, snap and hang. Right. Or
there was split quick mendings in the wings. There's always, did you ever, when you assigned a particular person who was there for you always to sort the blades out?
Yeah, also Chris King, sometimes I'd do something wrong and I'd feel a crunch, and I'd just hear him sigh in the wing like, oh, I've got to fix them all tomorrow afternoon, haven't I? And I'd be like, sorry.
We haven't heard from the Kims Edwards dancing together. I mean, when people see the show, it's one of the things they want to know about, actually. How do you work out duet with those hands and lifts and avoiding each other in that way, you know, and not getting poked in the eye, as Etta was talking about. How did you approach that?
I remember it being pretty intimidating when we very first started, and I think the blades were a prototype, so these like hands just coming at your eyes, and the boys hadn't quite got their spatial awareness yet, so because they were really quite long, weren't they? So there was an element of the sort of spatial awareness that changed and shifted, so we had to kind of rediscover what that sort of spatial relationship was, and I remember just finding muscles that I'd never felt before because they couldn't grip, so there were no grips. So I think, I don't know how you felt, Ash, but you had to do as much. I mean, that's obviously what you should do in partnering anyway, but you had to do so much of the work in order. It was a real sort of equality in the partnering.
Yeah, definitely. You took on a lot more of that responsibility that you maybe don't necessarily have always. And also, I suppose there's that safety net thing of like, if something happens, they can catch you, was also gone. So you really made sure that your abs were engaged, that your back was, your lats were down. And it was quite challenging on the body. And like you said, probably found muscles that we hadn't had to use before. So it was quite tough. And even like outside of lifts, even just how long they are. Say if Kim had to run around Edward, instead of 2 counts, it suddenly takes 6 counts to get around him if his arms are out and things like that. But I think obviously being a revival, you must have done all the hard work, Kerry, to figure out all those lifts and things, and I was just lucky to get all the top tips from you. So
I'm glad they were top tips.
They were. Surprisingly, we had no
top tips
falls or accidents, or I never have any scar wounds from the Scissorhands or anything.
Me neither.
We must have done all right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting you say about partnering. I suppose Kerry's absolutely right. It's a partnership. It's a two-way thing always. But I suppose it's rare that you have to think about the man as much, that it becomes even more of a partnership. You have to look after him, because sometimes he'll get into a bit of a, you know, you have to bear those extra things in mind to get through the duet. Sometimes you have to help a bit, and it's normally you want to forget about all that, just dance, you know, but it is quite a lot of thinking going on there as well, and being helpful to each other.
I think for us as well, like getting to, especially towards the end of the show, you know, like I think Dominic can say as well, you're so physically exhausted, and you know, the end duet, the leaving duet, which is just so amazing, but there'd be so many times in that duet in my head, and I just look at Ashley or Casey and just be like, I just don't know how much I've got left, you know. And the girls were just amazing at finding a way of just pulling you out of it, and you know, just the great idea of teamwork and just kind of using their strengths to help us through sometimes, which was really amazing.
Yeah, so I think I was dead lucky having Kerry, because she was already real confident with being, you know, and she'd had different versions of partners, and I do remember her just like basically just the Kim's Ash as well, just hanging off us in like a side plank, and like you say, you're in this place where you're like, I'm going now, and they just have to go, well, I'm going to adapt and go with you now because that's where you are, you know, like if you didn't quite get low enough. Or I remember one time, I think it was with you, Kerry or Noy, where I decided to go into the shoulder one really low. I was like, I need to get low, and I managed to hit my face, and my like makeup came off, and then you were like going over the other way, and I was holding your leg down.
I think it was me.
Just like, and I was like, and then coming down, I just grab, and then sometimes you'd get caught, wouldn't you? And you'd just be hugging it out till you release. And
yeah, it was interesting. There was quite a lot of problem solving that needed to happen, like, you know, spontaneously, which is always the fun bit, isn't it, as well, you know?
I think even the rest of the show, it's a very proppy show. Even if you're not Edward, there's a lot of stuff in that show, a lot of bits of props and scenery and things that can go wrong, and girls with pom-poms, and, you know, it's every sort of thing that can...
Rollerblades was always
rollerblades. I forgot about those.
Coming at full speed.
Basically, just terrible at that.
There was lots of new skills we had to learn, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was funny though. There was a funny thing. Yeah, we threw everything into this show, I think.
I fell over a lot.
Lots of falling over.
Well, I've got an abiding memory of you, Et, when before I did Peg, when I was still doing Tiff, watching you, and when we finished Gossip, and there was the blackout at the end of Gossip, and everyone used to dash off to get into their quick change to the barbecue, and I did Tiff, so I had my pink velour tracksuit ordinarily into shorts and a t-shirt, which was a breeze. So I used to be doing, and I thought, right, I'm going to be doing Peg soon. So I was watching Et, and I never, every single show, her change was so quick that she'd be literally in the wing, and then she'd be the last person onto the stage, and you'd hear her going, excuse me, racing, and then often having to get zipped up by Scott because your zip didn't do up. I know, I remember that so clearly, because that dress as well was made of like very thick material. Was it the Dottie barbecue dress?
Yeah.
It was so for upholstery material. God, I remember that because it was such a beautiful dress, but it was like the material just didn't move, did it?
You may have preempted me a little bit. My next question was going to be, just each of you, I asked you to think of what's your favourite part of the show, or a favourite, like, to a memory or a memory from it. Could be something you're involved with or something you like watching or whatever. Let's quickly go around and see what those are. Ash.
Well, my favourite part of the show, definitely to dance and probably to watch, is the ice dance. Because that's when you get that classic, I'm not going to sing it, that kind of music.
You sing it, please.
It's just that classic, you know, it's so magical. He's built this ice sculpture for Kim, and she comes out of the house and sees it, and it's snowing in front of the gauze.
Yes, it is, yeah. It's a beautiful moment, I agree.
So pretty.
Yeah,
it's funny because the gauze is in as well, like the see-through thing. You kind of feel like you're in a little snow globe as well, and it's a really intimate kind of moment with Kim and Edward, and yeah, I just love that bit to do and to watch. And
beautiful. Yeah. Liam?
I think I've got echo Ash and say the same. I think both duets for me, the ice dance, really special, and the leaving duet is just another amazing duet and really heartbreaking actually. But also the barbecue, I just think it's so colourful. I think it was one of my favourites to watch. And I think I can say it's such a great show for everyone. They feel so fulfilled because there's all these amazing characters, and just like we were talking about before, it's just so much on stage and so much to play with. And every night felt like a different performance really, because there's so much to play with within your characters and what was on stage and the situation. You're at a barbecue, it's summer, it's, you know, so just to watch that and to be a part of it was fantastic.
It's rare actually, Liam, in a show, isn't it, that where all the characters are so clearly defined for you before you go into it. The families and what they're like and what they're into and whether they're, you know, what their characteristics are. It's a really fun show to be in.
One of the only shows, isn't it, apart from Topiary, where everyone's just one character the whole way through.
Yes, quite unusual. Quite unusual, yeah. Dommy?
I think to watch is the farewell duet, or to do it fresh, because I've done it just as a duet, but when you get there in the show, it's a different story, but then you're at a place where you can play it right, I guess is the benefit. But for me, it's the same scene. For me, it starts a bit sooner though. It's the whole Jim roller skating over. I think the humour, the nastiness, into Edward being a bit cheeky, where he does a rude gesture, into then you feel sorry for him, and then he has a moment of like, I'm going to do something about it, and it's just, he's in the silhouette, and if you nail the attitude turn, you know you're having a good day. You're like, here we go. And then Kim comes out, you try not to fall off the ladder, and then you just, you know, it ends well. And I think, and like Ash said, the oohs and the ahs of the music is, I won't sing it, but for me, that's the memory. That and the memory of Etta falling over front of the stage in, you know, Meet the Bogs, where she's running with a chair, and I'm supposed to copy her feet, and she just hits the deck face first on the floor, and I was like, do I copy her or do I do the choreography? And then she's just like, oh! That's what I got.
Kerry, are you going to say the same bit? I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I mean, ice dance, you know, it's just so magical. Farewell duet, the emotional journey of that is just, you know, it's indescribable, really. So But I actually, I mean, it's really hard to choose. I was really kind of thinking about it. Those are my sort of exceptional moments, but every bit of it is just so fun. And I was thinking about Kim's bedroom, which is such a fun scene, you know, when you see all the kids together, and then this sort of, you know, Jim actually being really horrible to Edward, but kind of pretending he's his mate, and you know, and there was so much to play on in that scene that I loved. Really enjoyed that as well. And I guess a personal moment is that when we first did it, Scott Ambler was playing Bill Boggs, my dad, and at the beginning of every single show that we ever did, we were behind the house. We wait there for the whole beginning till the start of Suburban Ballet, kind of just waiting here to come out of the house. And he'd count me in, and he'd hide a 3, which was my count to go on, somewhere at the back of the house, and I had to find it before I went on, before every show.
Bessie.
Got it. No, but it was just something about it that was just so lovely. You know, it was one of those you know, those behind the scenes joyous moments as well that I just loved.
Maddie?
Oh, well, my favourite memory actually, which is a personal memory for me, is old Kim, actually, because I remember when it started, I just didn't, I mean, I'd seen the film, obviously knew that Winona Ryder started it, but I sort of felt like it's like she's opening the book and reading the story, and then she finishes it, and she's literally only seen it at the very beginning and the very end of the show, and it's a very simple thing that happens. She just walks across the stage and introduces the story, and then at the end is reliving her memories of Edward. But it's a very special thing for me, that especially at the end, because it always used to feel so that you were trying just as an individual to sort of bring everything that the show had been about into that moment, you know. And I always used to really prepare myself behind the grave before I came on. I used to think, you know, watch the swirl happen and then go out there and, you know, and it's just, and see this, and I remember the snow and everything, the music and the colour of the lighting, and it's just so beautiful. It's a really beautiful moment, and there's really nothing much going on except the snow, but I just love that moment. Really special.
Yeah, I agree. Beautiful moment. Etta?
Well, I've got loads of memories there. Edward was one of the shows that I laughed so much on, not just because of the joy of the show, but the community backstage as well. And there was, apart from the Kims and the Edwards, you have quite a lot of time backstage where you're talking to people, so I always really enjoyed that. But I think one of my favourite parts of the show is the Suburban Ballet and Peg popping out through the door. That has to be one of my favourite moments, and the introductions of all the families and into cars. I just used to love that bit, and the Boggs family in particular were always had such a good time behind the house before we went through, and it just felt like we were such a unit and such a characterful unit, and we were always laughing more or less when we came out with the cars as well. Always something would have happened behind the house which would make us be really joyful. And I suppose I really loved that. And the other little bit I used to like doing was the little dance that Peg and Bill do into Christmas. We come in and then we start that little dance, and it goes
position. Yeah.
Oh, I love that bit.
Yeah.
I love doing that bit, and I also loved my costumes, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, you were very insistent on getting great costumes from Les. You knew which way's bed was.
I just remembered the best bit, actually. Edward's curtain call.
I was going to say that.
Really the best
bit.
Really?
So that for me.
Well, we should explain to people who've not seen it. The curtain call is everyone takes their bows in families, and then Edward, who we assume at the end of the story has sort of disappeared into thin air and has died or just gone into become a heavenly creature or something. We're not quite sure what happens to him. And then it's sort of like he comes back, although it's a curtain call. And then he brings the snow to the audience. He lifts his hands and the snow comes out into the audience as well as on stage. It's like he's giving the audience a gift. Then everyone comes on. And it's a real acting thing, even though it's a a curtain call, we all had to act as if it's the first time we'd seen snow, and we'd like, you know, that feeling. Two little things, they're not my favourite bits in the show, but I was just remembering how many quirky little lovely things there are in it when I was thinking about it this morning. And those scenes, you know, the barbecue's full of things, and lots of little moments. But I remember that two things I really love was the beach ball moment, with throwing the beach ball and throwing it off stage to him, and then hearing that bang and him coming in with the first beach ball. I thought it was brilliant, I have to say. It's a brilliant one. And the other one, the what?
The beach ball didn't actually go off.
Oh, well, that was...
Yeah, there were so many things that went wrong with that.
Bouncing back on stage, bang. So many fails. The other one that I really like is Christmas carols.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Little gestural Christmas carols. I thought that was such fun. And
they were brilliant.
Full of sweet little moments like that.
Yeah.
We've probably got to wind up fairly quickly now, because there's so much to say about this show, and we obviously all love it, and more things are coming out as we talk. I wonder what, apart from your own personal viewpoint, a personal, which you were just talking about, really, what do you think is what are the things that make this show really work for an audience? What is the magic of the show, do you think?
I think it's fantastical, isn't it? Because you're dealing with a character, Edward, who is so otherworldly and so magical, and the fact you're bringing that person into a community, and that community is all about family. It's all about family and sharing and being part of a community, and it's what happens when you bring somebody who's other into a community.
An outsider into a community.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can relate to Edward in a way, because I think we've all felt at times a bit judged, or, you know, he starts off as like a baby, and he learns all this amazing things through being in this amazing family, in this community. He learns about relationships and love and acceptance, and I think people just relate to aspects of the character, and also they go on this whole journey with him, don't they? And I think there's, in the show, generally speaking, for the rest of the characters as well, they're just so relatable. You know, we all know a Peg Boggs, or you know, we all know those people, and I think that's why people just love it so much and find it funny and kind of amazing, really.
It's like this real life story, but with these over the top, caricature, colourful, out there people. It's just so joyful to watch. Like, as joyful as it is to do, I think it's just as fun to watch. And then the combination of the story and the music and all those colours and costumes and things, I just think it's got something for everyone. I don't know anyone who hasn't enjoyed it that I know of.
I think as well, the couple of times I've done it, every time we've gone back to it, it's kind of, people have loved it more. And I think the feel of the show, it's easy to get into, and it's because it's like that 50s Americana. For me, it was like watching Back to the Future when he goes back, Marty McFly, and it's like the cool jock. It's like the kind of modern, it's not classical, it's kind of modern moves that people like can enjoy watching, and it's very easy to follow because it's basically a musical without numbers, isn't it? Without songs. It's like that style. And again, like Liam said, everybody's felt like they're a bit of an outsider or awkward at some point. So you can relate to this character, even though he looks nothing like what you've seen before. You can see a bit of yourself in him, or Kim, or Jim, or somebody on stage. They're not like these, even though they're heightened, or maybe Joyce if you're that kind of vixen. I don't know, like, you know, they're all to the max. But they're just great situations to watch. The comedy offset with the emotion, and the music just comes into it.
I think the music is really a massive part of it. There's no, you know, it's interesting how often it's used in advertising and on TV. When you want a bit of magical music, it's usually Edward Scissorhands that they choose, you know. So much so that I remember Danny saying to me years ago, he said, if you ever hear it anywhere, tell me, because I don't get all the royalties for it. And it's used so much in advertising, and stuff, and so I don't always know about it. So he said, if you ever hear it, tell me. But it's the go-to magical piece, isn't it, in a way? It's so beautiful. And I think that's what... And what the show does actually is expands that music even more than you get in the film. I forgot when I went back and looked at the film, having done the show, the music's there, but it's background music a lot of the time. We bring it to the forefront. It's our storytelling music, it's our emotional music, and Terry did such a brilliant job of adding so much more quirky music and beautiful music to get that really complemented Danny's music, so it becomes a complete score. So I think that's a lot to do with it. I think the story, as you say, the story about how do we treat outsiders, something everyone can relate to and make you think about how you are in your own life, I think. And I think it's just a true fairy tale, isn't it? Has something to say. It's a fable, it has something to say. I think we all come out feeling good at the end of it. And it's generous, isn't it? It's a generous show where it gives to the audience. Really, as you were saying, it's sort of so much to relate to characters, and it's a very relatable is a good word, but I think it's more sort of joyous. It just gives so much to the audience, and it's a give and take show, isn't it? Really, two-way thing, definitely. I tell you what, one thing I'm going to say, because we get a lot of people who will say, watching this, who will say, can you stream it? Will it be shown? I'm afraid it won't, because we have rights issues with the original film. So we've never been allowed to film it, to show. We have got films of it ourselves. We have archive film of it, obviously. And we have a few little clips that we can show in our previews and stuff. So if you've not seen the show and you want to see some sections of it, we have got some things that I think we'll be posting this week. And we have a little section that was done in a Christmas show that we did with Kerry and Dom, is that right? Yeah, we shall probably show that. So we've got little bits, but we can't show the whole thing, sadly. It's a real shame, so I'd love to capture it. Things may change one day, but at the moment we won't be streaming it, I'm afraid. I just had a little thing I brought from my loo, which is hanging in my loo, that I might just wind up with, is this signed programme from when Johnny Depp came to see the show. And I wasn't there. I don't know if any of you were there. I don't think.
Yes.
Yes, Kerry and Maddie. And he came to the show in Los Angeles with his kids, and apparently he'd not seen the show, not seen the film since he made it. And he found the show, seeing the imagery and from the film that he'd never seen, really emotional. And this is what he wrote in this program. It says, Matt, bravo, 3 exclamation marks, teetered on the verge of tears, mate. Well done and thanks. Respect, Johnny Depp.
Oh, lovely.
Lovely to have, because I think we all were very, along with the creators, we were very inspired by his performance, and that's an iconic performance. We were up against, as the guy said earlier, so we're thrilled to have him come and see us and give his seal of approval. So I thought it might be a nice way to finish. Thank you all for being here today. It's been lovely to reminisce about this very special show that we all love. We will bring it back one of these days. Hopefully we can all still be in it then, if it's not too far away. And thanks for tuning in, and check out all the stuff that's online this week about Edward Scissorhands, and enjoy that, and stay safe, and love from us all. We'll see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.